podcasting for brands. IamTheHow.com.
Radio contact has been attempted.
Well, hello.
Right, that's Patrick doing his framework show. This is Dave Clark, I Am The How, Sound Art Radio. We're live at 5, as they say, on 102.5 FM and online. And this week I'm joined by Jonathan. Jonathan, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Nice to see you.
Yeah, we've been planning this for a while.
We have.
So here we are in the studio.
We met for the first time properly today.
Yeah, we did.
Though, yeah, I've been in touch with you before.
Yeah, no, it's good. So, Topsham, is that right? Is that where you're based?
Yeah, just south of Exeter.
Yeah, nice place.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is that where you live and work? Is that where your office is?
Yeah, I'm based. I have a small home office.
Yeah.
In fact, really.
Yeah, it's a nice part of. I mean, I do know Topsham because I mentioned before that University of Exeter, and actually that's where a lot of people used to live. But it was different.
Yeah.
Then. It wasn't. It's always been a lovely place, but it was a little bit more gritty.
It used to be the biggest port in England back in the 1700s.
There you go.
And it had a bit of a rough and ready reputation.
Yeah. So.
But now, it's a lot of down from London, down from Bath. Yeah. It's a relocation centre for the upwardly mobile.
Perfect place for Exeter.
It's lovely, actually. It is nice. It's a good community. There's a nice school. Yeah. And I came down there about 10 years ago, and we had young kids, and they went into the local junior school, and you get to know people really well around there. It's a good community.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, what is it that you do in a nutshell?
Well, I do quite a lot, but I, first of all, run an interior design company called Multi-Story Thinking.
Right. We
specialise in helping people create beautiful spaces to live and work in. And that can be anything from a home to an office, student accommodation, bars and restaurants, full across the board really. And we're interior refurbishment specialists, I guess. We help people make changes to spaces,
right,
to improve the way they work, to refresh and renew.
Yeah.
And it's design service, so we go right from the concept, developing ideas, right through to completion, working with builders.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to dig into that. No pun intended.
Yeah. And that's part of what I do. That's my business. I also teach interior design at the University of Plymouth. So I've got quite a lot of things going on.
So it's all the world of design.
The world of design, and particularly interior design.
Yeah.
And architectural refurbishment.
So let's go back in the time machine.
Yeah.
So growing up, first job, and the journey into that world of interior design. So
you want the first job? You mentioned the paper round. I did have a paper round.
Did you?
Yeah. In Windermere in Cumbria. So we moved to the Lake District when I was about 8.
Okay.
And we had about 10 to 12 years there before I went to university. But yeah, I had a paper round, and Windermere is a tourist area, so lots of jobs in the catering and hotel business. I used to wash pots and pans, make beds, clean. Yeah. All good training for life.
Well, it's a lovely part of the world.
Yeah.
And but I imagine doing a paper round at this time of year, going into the winter, was pretty tough.
Pretty grim. Fridays, Westminster Gazette Day. There's always a big bag.
Okay.
So it's okay though. A bit of pocket money.
Yeah.
But that was a nice place to grow up because it was beautiful landscape.
Yeah. Not
that I was that bothered about it at the time,
sure.
But there's not much pressure. It was quite safe, and it's nice to move away though. I must say, when I went to college, I moved up to Carlisle to do a foundation course in art and design, and then on to Nottingham to do a degree in furniture design.
So the design thing, is that something that that was always part of your...
Yeah, I guess when I was at school, we had two sort of opposing directions. One was the art route, which I was good at art. The classic route would go foundation course on to do a degree. I also did sciences, so half the teachers were saying, right, you must go to university, and I did get a place at Durham University to study botany and geography,
right,
which I didn't really want to do. And I didn't do that. I went to do the art route.
Okay.
And art foundation. Thought I wanted to be a graphic designer. Very quickly discovered that I was more into three-dimensional design.
Right.
and then ended up at a furniture design course by accident, actually, because I applied for an interior design course and didn't get in.
Okay.
And managed to scrabble a place at a furniture design course in Nottingham, and that was my direction. Yeah.
So what was your what can you remember any outstanding pieces of furniture that you designed?
Well, I've still got stuff from my postgraduate course, but no, nothing amazing. I mean, it was all pretty crap, to be honest.
Was it?
You know, I did when I was on foundation course, I did a piece of furniture very inspired by 1950s sort of kind of design. It was based on a tie and a lapel, the shape.
Yeah, that sounds all right. I can kind of imagine that.
Yeah.
So did it have a big fat Windsor knot?
It did have it was all made out of wood, so it wasn't soft and tactile. But yeah, it was an interpretation of that. We were just coming out of that period of postmodernism. Memphis group in Italy, I was a bit inspired by that. There was references to the 1950s sort of decorative motifs, so we were very heavily influenced by that, and I was producing pieces quite nice, but nothing amazing, I would say. It took a bit of time for that to settle in. But
has the world sort of woken up in a way to interior design more than what do people feel? Do you think that people are more observant about their surroundings and the furniture and the tables than they used to be?
I think definitely more now. So there's so many more programs about interior design, magazines about interior design. I was talking a couple of weeks ago with a PR friend of mine, and there was probably a couple of magazines available back in the 80s that were promoting design. The odd page here or there in the Sunday supplements. But now you've got whole industry of design magazines, design programs on the telly, makeover programs. There's so many more shops that you can buy stuff in.
Sure.
You've got IKEA popping up everywhere. There's the accessibility to good design is really good and strong, and the awareness of it, and people put more importance on it. Yeah, so it's definitely much better. And interior design as a course, which I teach the course at the University of Plymouth, very popular because people recognise it as a career path that they can follow.
So because the other thing is there are lots of shops and coffee bars and so on the high street that actually have quite a high level of design. So people seem to me to be kind of almost brought up on a high street which has got interior design and design at its heart.
I think there must have been. You're right. There are so many well-designed spaces, and really, the high street is full of designed stores, designed coffee shops, whether they're sort of branded ones or independents. There's people like to go and spend time in these spaces.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there must have been that sort of thing in the past, but I don't know. It just seems there's more of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that because if I sort of cast my mind back to the sort of 70s and early 80s, it was more sort of plastic, orange polystyrene chairs and sort of Formica tables really.
I think there's a more sophistication and more variety, and that's probably to do with the age of the internet and how we all know more about our surroundings and what's available further afield. Influencers are coming in much quicker. But there's certainly more opportunities and a better awareness of using interior design to create a statement, create a destination, create something that can really contribute to a business by creating the atmosphere that people enjoy.
Is there a danger of this sort of, because we're all human and, some of us more than others can be a bit lazy sometimes. And there's this phrase I heard the other day, airportization, where things in the world can start to look like everywhere else in the world. In actual fact, quite a lot of shopping malls look like airports, look like...
You just don't know where you are, do you?
Just don't know, and it's all the same. It's kind of, so the design element is there, but it's kind of lazy design, so it's a bit of chrome here, a bit of glass here, some kind of big lighting, and how do we guard ourselves against that?
And then that is present, and I think Exeter used to have the most homogeneous high street in the country. It was like most like the rest of the country. It had everything that everybody else had. But that's changing a little bit. The big brands do tend to come and rubber stamp their design on a site.
Yeah.
But we are getting some differentiation in that, where they will do a different interpretation in different locations.
Right.
But yeah, it's often difficult to know where you are, isn't it, when you get landed,
Yeah.
Out of the TARDIS into some shopping centre.
Because it's expensive as well. I
Yeah.
get there's a cost to good design, isn't there?
Yeah, and that needs to be rolled out on a scale, particularly with the brands.
Yeah.
But then I think it's down then to the host architecture and the shaping of the space around it. So we can have recognised brands plugged into buildings and spaces, but it's actually and it probably comes down to local authorities, how do they manage the experience of going through the city, So certainly in Exeter they created the shopping centre and brought restaurants into the centre and housing. That changes the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So there you get more of a feeling of identity around space.
So tell me a little bit about the business. So multi-story thinking, and what is it that business offers that makes it a little different to the others that occupy the same kind of area?
On the face of it, not much different from any other interior design company, other than the experience that I've got and the team that I've built. Interior design is a fairly standard service really across the board, but we all have our specialisms and our different approaches. I've done a lot of work with student accommodation and office fit out, and also a lot of engagement with employees and clients and client user groups. So that's particularly important with designing for other people, getting them involved in the process of design. And that's one of our main features is that engagement process that we've introduced and developed our own version of it.
So just tell me a little bit more about that then. So I know there's no such thing as a standard project. They can differ between retail or residential or whatever. But what's the kind of conversation? What's the process?
Well, if you look at workspace, we do a lot of office fit outs, and the sort of previous version of how to tackle it would be to go in and put a design in, organise the space planning, and then say, this is what it's going to look like, and here you go, thank you very much. We've developed a process of engagement where we talk to the staff, get them to give us feedback about how they want the space set up, and they know how to work. They're doing the job, so they're the best resource. But also we hand over some of the decision-making process in terms of design and design elements to them to choose how they want to see the space, and that's a really important feature in terms of getting them on board in the process of change, getting them to feel part of the process, feel valued, and it has a massive impact on their well-being and health, because they just feel they can see themselves in the design that's been created, and they don't feel like they're just being subject to some design imposed from above. It's much more democratic.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we do a lot of workshops and sessions to tease out the design. Lots of other companies do that the same, but we've developed it alongside a workplace psychologist, Dr. Craig Knight from Exeter University, who's helped us to build the process, which is really unique in the field. I think it just takes the process and turns it on its head almost, with really great results, because the engagement in the process from the employee's point of view is fabulous, and it really improves their sense of worth. Their mental health, their wellness, their productivity goes through the roof.
So tell me a little bit more about the psychological input. What's that kind of angle? Because that sounds quite
I met Craig a few years ago, and he was going on about the design process delivers improvements, but it doesn't really make any difference to productivity, well-being, and health. And I was thinking, that sounds just crazy. Why wouldn't a nice design make a difference? It does make a difference, but he was approaching it from the psychological point of view of how people feel when they're given a design imposed from above.
Right.
And generally they feel a bit like disgruntled. I'm being told to do this. I've got no choice. They have their autonomy removed. Their sense of worth is removed. And they just think, well, it's the management telling me what to do.
Yeah. So
there's a sense of, sort of disgruntlement.
Yeah.
If you turn that on its head and get people to engage in the process more actively, they suddenly become part of the solution. They take ownership. They see themselves in the design, and their mentality is totally flipped. And it was that analysis that really made us wake up to this approach, because Craig was doing the research where he could demonstrate the impact of that approach on health and well-being and productivity and cognitive intelligence. And some of his stats were just staggering. You wouldn't believe it, 30 to 40% improvement across those fields. So you think from a business owner's point of view, if your staff are going to be 30 to 40% more productive, then why wouldn't you change your interior and involve them in this process? So that underpinning of workplace psychology has really helped us to frame the way we approach it.
But having them involved, having the people, the staff involved, is the key.
Absolutely.
Because even if they were in a sort of really uber cool place, it was great. Their perception of that as some environment that may have been imposed upon them would taint that.
Yes, it would. I mean, an uber cool environment, like the Google office, for example, if the people talk about the slides and the ping pong tables, is good and can be better than a really stark, empty office. But it doesn't do anything for the way that people feel.
Sure.
And I think that's the key that I've come to realise over the last few years about what's important in design is making people feel good about the spaces that they work in. They're productive, they're happier, healthier, and that you design the space to provide that from a practical and ergonomic point of view, but you design it using a process that brings them on board psychologically. Yeah, I
can see that. Otherwise, they're just a big hamster in a cage with another little running wheel being
what
dumped
people want is kind of trust, and they want to be involved.
Yeah.
And that's a really difficult thing for managers to do with their staff, because they think their staff are going to make mistakes, but they tend not to.
No, exactly. Great, interesting, isn't it? So let's just turn to the sort of motivation. So we want to wake up in the morning and get out of bed. Why do you do what you do?
Well, for a long time I thought I had to get up to earn money, and that's still one of my prime motivations.
Yeah.
I can earn money from doing what I do, which is great. I enjoy doing it. I like the process of engaging with clients and making changes happen, and seeing the results of how people can go from struggling with something to being released into a space or a design that enables them to do things in a much more effective way. The idea of helping people is really important.
Yeah.
Our design process, my skills, helps people achieve what they want in life, whether that's a better looking house or a better, more functional space, or a business that attracts customers, or an office that is a great place to work in. So it's helping people to get to that point where they're working or living in really beautiful spaces that work well.
Yeah, interesting. So there's no, this is a question, but is there such a thing as a sort of top tip for people in a bland office or in a living space that's not particularly inspiring? Are there things that can be done, or is it always more complicated than that?
There's always stuff you can do. I mean, I think it's about getting your personality into a space. Most people, let's look at people living at home. They've got loads of stuff that they've gathered over the years. I guess it's about really choosing the things that they really love and like and value, getting rid of anything that they don't really want or
That's
feel
hard,
guilty about. It is hard, yeah. There's a whole industry of tidying up that helps you to make those decisions. But
yes.
I think in a domestic context, you've really got to understand how you want your life to run, and often that's difficult to analyse, and it changes when you have children and as they grow up. But just bringing some elements that you really love into your space.
Because there's a bit of pressure, isn't there? Because, we were saying earlier about these sort of makeover programs and magazines, and there's always a sort of two sides to the coin. So it's really nice that we're aware of good design, the importance of nice spaces, but then in a way that kind of puts pressure on people to kind of have that. So they might feel a little bit ashamed of their their living room or, or
the
their workspace.
pressure to consume and to update. Yeah, it's always going to be there, isn't it? I think the flip side of that is that there's so much information to help you make those decisions. So, and there's lots of choices at different price points, so you don't have to spend lots of money. There are ways of creating space, with second-hand furniture or salvage or repurposing, recycling. Or just being selective, because you can mix and match stuff. Go to IKEA and then have something from somewhere more expensive and put them together. And the trick, I suppose, is to have the confidence to do it, and that's what a lot of people don't necessarily have. The creative confidence to put together space like that. In terms of office space, that's more difficult, I suppose, because you're working within a system, and this goes back to the engagement thing where people don't feel part of it. But it's sometimes very hard to work out what a company does when you go into their office space, because beyond the reception, you're in a sort of generic office landscape.
Sure.
And that's something you could change easily with colour. Bring some plants in. Not necessarily everyone has their own bits of stuff on the desk, but just some personality into the space. Maybe the meeting rooms need to have pictures or colour, or better lighting.
Lighting's key.
There's the things that can be done on a individual basis without a designer, certainly.
So tell me a little bit more about the University of Plymouth and what goes on there then, and the course. What's happening down there?
The University of Plymouth. Well, I run the interior design course at the University of Plymouth. We are part of the 3D design department in the Faculty of Art and Design and Architecture, so we're amongst a load of other creative courses in one of the buildings down in Plymouth. I would say it's the best place to go and study interior design.
Right.
But I am slightly biased, but in terms of a location, it's a fabulous place to study. Plymouth, down by the sea there, close to the moors. Very often it's sunny, and it's a nice compact city, so it's not too daunting for students. But we do focus on our course on employability skills, training you to work, teaching you how to be a designer, to be flexible, adaptable, creative.
And how many places, how big is the...
We've got about, I'm not sure about the whole university, but we've got about 50 to 60 students on our first year. Right. And that splits down into various different disciplines. But
and are they coming from sort of across the UK?
We are getting quite a lot from the southwest, as you might expect. But we do draw from further afield, and including Europe and China as well. We've got quite an international cohort.
Yeah, good.
So it's a nice mixture, and the beauty of it in learning interior design in that context is you're side by side with product designers, furniture designers, designer makers, illustrators, photography, the full breadth of creative courses. So you get that synergy between them and the cross-fertilisation.
Sure.
And and it's very much like a sort of agency environment where you're working in teams and groups, and there's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas.
And what are the sort of employment prospects? what's it like?
Well, it's never easy, I must say, but we do have students who've got jobs, whether that's locally or up in London. There's definitely work available.
People are always going to need new ideas,
definitely.
new designs.
Like you said earlier, the thirst for new design and design space is still there. And the thing I discovered about projects is that they wear out. You need to refurbish, and you need to renew, and businesses move and adapt, and so there's always a need for that sort of service.
People get familiar with their surroundings, don't they? So what was a wow sort of 5 years ago is like, that looks a bit tired.
And also things change. So in a business context, we'll have companies that maybe are expanding, or indeed contracting, or they take on another company and have to consolidate within one space.
Sure.
So there's always a sort of churn of space required in business.
And so you went back to the business, your business, multi-story. So there's yourself, and who else do you work with? You've got
Well,
other-
it's mainly me, but I have a team
okay.
of people. I used to work with my sister back in London. We had a company, we employed people. We weren't a massive company. We had 3 or 4 staff, full-time staff, and now I've sort of stripped all that down. So it's just me, but I do work with other people. So depending on the project, I'll work with other designers, technicians, space planners.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of work with a company in Warrington. They've got a full sales team and backup team. So it went from me running a business and looking after people working underneath me to being more a kind of freelance role.
Sure.
Much more agile in that sense, lower costs, which is great. You don't have to worry about having to feed a team with work all the time.
No, quite. No, I understand.
Yeah, so project will come in, we'll assess it, we'll put together a team to do it, and then get on with it.
Yeah. So people want, excuse me, if people want to find out more, what's the best way?
Website, multistorythinking.com.
And what about would you need networking?
I do networking, yeah.
Yeah.
I network around the southwest, Business Network Southwest in Exeter, and I do some cycling networking actually. That's another interesting one. We don't get
down in Plymouth.
no, down in Exeter.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't get much networking done because you're cycling, but
no, I know that Nash solicitors down in Plymouth have a monthly cycling network meeting. Yeah, which is
that's quite nice. So depending on how fit you are, it's sort of it's how much chatting you can do whilst you're cycling, basically. But I do a bit of networking around. Well, try and do a regular networking around Exeter because I do enjoy working locally. And it's good to know people, and not just for me to get the opportunity to work for them, but also people working for me or contacts. Which is how we met. Yeah,
it's kind of social as well, isn't it? I mean, I think because I'm self-employed, and it's a way of getting out and not getting too much cabin fever.
And you can get a perspective on an issue that you might be struggling with from someone else in the industry, or even some advice or services. And we worked with a company called Winning Tenders in Exeter who write and submit tenders for local authority tender presentations, and they've been really good, helped us win loads of tenders, as
good,
the name suggests.
Yeah.
So that was a networking contact, and it's been really fruitful. So it's a good way of getting out and about.
So you mentioned cycling. So is that something you do in your spare time?
I do. Yeah.
So is that your main sort of interest out of work?
It's It's my main exercise, I suppose. Okay. Yeah, I cycle to work and back, and then cycle road cycling. When I can get out. But it's very fashionable for men of our age to be dressed in lycra.
So
cycling around the lanes. But I do that to keep fit, really, and just get out and about in the Devon lanes. It's some great landscape to cycle through.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about a couple of things really. So ambitions for the business in the future, and then I just want to touch on the podcasts that you do as well. So. What are the projects and ambitions for 2020 and beyond?
2020, that's a good question. We're always trying to. Well, we work in 2 main sectors: student accommodation and office fit out. So on the student accommodation front, it's just about extending the amount of work we're doing with different universities and different accommodation providers.
Yeah.
And we're on a lot of the frameworks for supply of that. So it's about building those relationships with universities and then starting to plug into their refurbishment programs. We're pushing a lot on social spaces, trying to develop spaces that are more conducive to creating interaction with students, and also spaces that are easier for students to navigate through. In the sense that they're not intimidating to use. So what you often find are spaces that are a little bit hard or uncomfortable or too open plan. Okay. So students, particularly with a little bit of nervousness about making friends, struggle to use those spaces. So we're really pushing the well-being side of that to try and encourage a more sensitive approach to designing spaces. So that's a big push. Office fit-out stuff, again, it's the engagement, getting more people involved in the engagement process that we've developed.
And a podcast. So let's
podcasts, yeah. Well,
so tell me the story.
The multi-story thinking podcast. I can't remember at which point I decided I wanted to do it. It was about 2 years ago. I'd started listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
And we had a blog, which was the multi-story thinking blog, which was the sort of genesis of the company a few years ago, which is about giving out information, sharing information.
Sure.
Tips, advice, what we've been doing. Classic blog format. And that idea of sharing information and giving advice and sort of unravelling the mystery of interior design was built into, our kind of ethos. And the podcast seemed like a natural extension of that. I interview professionals from the design industry, and it just gives an insight into different aspects of it. We've had a PR lady, an ergonomist, we've had architects, interior designers, a mixture from across the built environment sector, focusing on interior design and how, pretty much like we're doing here, how
Sure.
they've got there, what their motivations are. So the podcast was about sharing the knowledge, really. An educational slant on that, so it's another resource for my students to get a better understanding of the context of the industry and who's involved.
Yep.
And it's been really good fun just chatting to people and hearing their approach to the industry and what they do.
So where do people find that? Are they, if they search multi-story?
Yeah, multi-story thinking.
podcast?
It's on my website.
Yep.
If you search on iTunes, you'll find us.
Yep.
There's Spotify.
Yeah, so it'll go out.
Stitcher.
It'll go out everywhere basically.
Yeah, most of the platforms, not all of them, but
Sure.
yeah.
It'll go if it goes on Apple and Google. And Spotify, then probably got most bases covered.
I think so. With your advice, you've been great over the last few months and giving some top tips on that.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad that was useful.
Yeah.
So brilliant. Well, we're gonna wrap up. I'm just going to do an outro just to let everybody know that you've been listening to Wavelength on Sound Art Radio 102.5 FM and online. I'm Dave Clark. I'm the How. I've been talking to Jonathan from Multi-Story Thinking. To get your business featured on this programme, just search Sound Art Radio Wavelength or I Am the How, that's all one word. Drop me a line. And as we were just saying, podcasts widely available, as this programme is too, on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, many other platforms. Please share and subscribe. Contact me if you'd like to come on the show. And don't forget, it's a good way to support local and small media. So, Jonathan, thanks very much for coming on.
You're welcome, thank you.
And we'll be back. We've got a guest next week. Let me just see who that is. Can't remember. Yes, I can actually. It's Selena from Asher Marks. She's based in Exeter. Selena Asher Marks, a very interesting solicitor. So we'll see you then. Cheers.
Podcasting for brands. I am the how.com.